Good afternoon. My name is Bob Elias, and as chairman of the Associated Student Speakers Program, I'd like to welcome you to our 6th program of the spring quarter. We have with us today James Earl Jones, who appeared in The Great White Hope and also is presently doing Othello at the Mark Taper Forum. And as I read today in the Times, he has just been signed to play The Man, the first black president, written by Irving Wallace, and the screenplay, I think, by Rod Serling. We have, I think, maybe sad news for some people here. It's my mistake. We had advertised that Mr. Jones was going to do some readings from Othello. However, he does it every night. If you want to hear him, you could hear him do the whole thing at the Mark Taper Forum. And what we're going to do is we will have basically a question-answer period where you'll have a chance to ask him things about his portrayal of any characters or any questions that you may want to ask. We have a mic set up at the right side of the stage, and we would appreciate it if you would use the mic, because for two reasons. One is so everybody could hear the question, and also we are taping this in case there are students here who can't hear it or who weren't able to attend the lecture today. It will be at the Communication Archives in Royce Hall, so you can hear it at any time you wish. So that's why we do want you to use the mic. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce James Earl Jones.
Thank you. Can you hear all right? All right. I just want to make one brief statement. It's about what's going on in my head. Indeed, I do not want to do any readings from Othello or anything else out of context at this point. I want to say that the production we're doing now at the Mark Taper Forum Theater is probably one of the last ones I will do on stage. I've come to the conclusion, after what little film I've done and the great deal of stage work I've done, that the film offers a better place to do complicated material. So I think for those of you who haven't seen my Othello, you better see this one, because I might not ever do it on the stage again, and I'm quite serious about that. If that leads us into discussions, if you want to know why and more specifically so on, that's one area we can discuss. I'd be happy to, because I'd like to try to get it clear in my own head. Some of you responded to the Irving Wallace, The Man, as if you might have read it. I haven't read the novel yet, you see. So I'll have some questions to ask you about that.
Well, I have a question to begin with. You had, in The Great White Hope, you portrayed a very powerful person, Jack Johnson, and also in Othello, you are also portraying a very, very strong type of character. And do you think this has hurt you in any way in your acting? I mean, not in getting roles to act, but I mean in stereotyping you maybe to the public as this powerful actor.
Yeah, somewhat, but you know, the words type, stereotype, archetype, all that are words that are concepts that we deal with, that we take advantage of as theater people. A playwright will write types, actors will conceive, hopefully, archetypes. At the very worst, we come up with stereotypes, you see, but I don't mind that. I like being different than I was as Jack Johnson, Jack Jefferson. I'll be glad to be different from I am now. I like changing, and until I find the guy I really like, you know, I like to keep on changing. That's the only concern I have about type, is that I would not like to be confined to any given type until I'm happy with it, whether it's successful or not.
We have a question over here.
Mr. Jones, First of all, in The Man, you won't be stereotyped because the character there is not like what you've been doing, for instance, in Othello or as Johnson. But I had a question concerning what you said about the stage and motion pictures, and it was this. In The Great White Hope, the play is such that at points you're not only an actor, but you're also a link with the audience, and you talk to the audience. And what are your feelings like in terms of on film, as it came out on film, the way they wrote it? It didn't hit the audience as hard, the idea of blackness, whereas on the stage, this idea of a white woman with a black man, or like when the mother comes out and she talks directly to the audience, it comes across a lot better that way. So I was just wondering what your ideas were in relationship to the effectiveness of the stage to do more things, different things than say, whereas film can do, like you said, complicated things. It has its own area.
You just picked the example that I think defeats my whole argument about going from leaving the stage and going to the film, except that The Great White Hope was a stage play first, and almost anything that followed, whether it was television or super duper scope film, it would have to be secondary, especially for those who saw the stage play. Indeed, the stage can reach further into the psyche of the audience, can stir the imagination perhaps even greater, because the demand is to have the audience do its job too. But I think for so many people who are not used to going to the theater, live theater, they expect it to all be handed to them. And I think I owe something to the people who don't dig the stage. I mean, there are a lot of people across this country who don't get to Broadway or the Mark Taper Forum Theater. And I'd like to share some of my creativity, as long as it is creativity, with them. Getting back to White Hope, I say again that the choice there was not to make a spectacular, jazzed-up cinema production out of that film. We wanted to, as faithfully, convey the story from stage to film. I think it has, if you want to compare it to some great cinema that is around today, it has weaknesses, yes, but that was not our choice then. See.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was suggested in our campus newspaper a couple months ago that Sackler wrote the black dialect in The Great White Hope as it turned out to be demeaning to black people, and that there was also some stuff that he didn't understand black people at all in what he wrote. How do you feel about that?
Whose opinion is that?
It was a writer here in our newspaper.
Mm-hmm. That's fine, you see, as a collaborator, you can criticize anybody I work with, and while I'm working with them, I won't hear your criticism. I cannot hear your criticism. Whether it's criticism of a writer or a director, I have to focus on his value rather than where he's mistaken. Now, I cannot afford to let myself be misled by his mistakes. I have to understand them, but that's not what I focus on. I focus on what I can achieve with him rather than against him. Now, I will say this about Howard Sackler's treatment of the dialect. It is completely fabricated. I am from Mississippi. I've lived in other southern states, and I've visited many, many others. And nowhere in the South or the North do black people speak quite the way the characters in Great White Hope speak. That is an author's fabrication of a dialect, which I think is quite fantastic, considering that Howard Sackler is a Aryan-looking Jew from New York, you see. I think it's quite marvelous that he was able to reach through his poetic imagination and find a speech, though not specifically from Mississippi or Galveston, Texas, that works for the theater, you see. Whether it's demeaning to black people or not, I can't quite cope with that because I'm a black man and I don't find it demeaning to me, you see. So when other black people say it's demeaning to them, they're speaking of some subjective experience that I am not having. I think dialects tend to be used against people in a demeaning way, but the dialect itself is not demeaning. When Dick Gregory chooses to use what we call bad grammar, that is not an accident. He does it deliberately and with meaning, with purpose. That is another kind of language. Just as Shakespeare is a language, so is ghetto dialect or country backwoods dialect a language. It is demeaning only when it is used against somebody and focused and used to say that you're stupid for being able to talk only like this. I have a dialect.
I was just wondering, in preparing for Othello, it's been done so many times, and I've seen it 2 or 3 times. What research did you do, or did you just Shakespeare, or did you see other versions of it, like Olivier or other people?
Yeah, I saw. We had a week where we saw as many films that were available of the Othello. I've seen 4 films so far. Olivier's being one of them. I've seen several productions of it, read most of the books that are, for me, pertinent, and for me that means that it has to show me something about the psychological development of the play. I will never say I've done enough study. I think when I say I want to do this as a film next, in 5 years, I want to have achieved Othello as a motion picture, because then, as Orson Welles teaches every actor through his work, that if you're going to worry about the delivery of the poetry at the same time you're worrying about physical form or other aspects of style, then you're going to split yourself in too many different directions. So what Welles always did in his films was to save the reading for the looping room. In other words, he'd do his physical performance focusing totally on that, and then he'd go into the reading, into the looping room and do his vocal performance. And I think that makes some kind of sense, because if you want to go for accuracy, you can do it in several different ways rather than try to do it all in one shot, as you'd have to on stage. You can go for your poetic speech in a whole different intensive looping session. You can go for what fascinates me, for instance, is that that film is more mental than the stage. It is, I think you can reach the imagination, if you try to, much better. I won't say deeper, but you can reach it much more easily. Where you have soliloquies, I'm sure they've experimented with this before. Olivier's Hamlet, for instance, all the soliloquies were done without his mouth moving, that is, as if it was going on his head. That's not the most effective way, but there are fantastic ways you can achieve that. Can you imagine, for instance, achieving Hamlet's ghost with film? And just imagine the awkwardness of trying to achieve a credible ghost on stage. There are great advantages which I simply intend to exploit in film.
Do we have any other questions?
About anything.
Yes. The question was what Mr. Jones thinks the weaknesses of the film are.
The weaknesses of which film? The Great White Hope. I haven't studied it as film, so I couldn't say. I've seen it only in a screening room. I haven't seen it in a public theater, so I don't know how audiences respond to it. I'm very anxious to find out, but I want to get a little more distance from it before I do that. I haven't seen it as cinema yet. I mean, I haven't seen it as a film yet. I saw it as I was watching the performances when I saw it. I haven't seen it on a large screen with an audience yet. Are you aware of, I mean, are there weaknesses that you'd like to tell me about? I see.
Yes.
Therapy? Of course. I assume you're talking about primal therapy. I'm in my 4th month. I have feelings now. You know, I don't think I'm going to fall on the floor and scream for you, but but I might do that when I get home, because this is a very frightening experience, to be sitting in front of this many people and be asked to, I don't know, deliver. But then you see, you're being asked to deliver too. That's why these microphones are set around here. But it is a frightening experience to confront people. And I, as an 8-year-old boy, became a stutterer because that experience was so frightening that I had conflicts popping off in me. My emotions were in conflict with my speaking ability, and it got jammed, you might say. And I'm an actor now to a great extent because I was a stutterer, and acting was a way of my defending myself against that terror. The terror of communicating with people, you see. So, what I'm learning through therapy is that I'm going back now, and I feel that terror. It's very, very frightening. I'm smiling now simply because I can acknowledge it, that it's frightening. A year ago I would have said, oh, I'm not scared, you know, my knees cracking. But now I can acknowledge it. I don't want to, I'd be happy to give you my versions of, I'd like to give you my answers to questions about primal therapy, but I would not like to try to be a spokesman for it or against it at this point. Is there a specific question that you have about it?
No, he didn't. No.
I see.
Yes, could we go on?
On stage, you mean? Of course we were. But somehow the audience, once they got engaged with the play, were willing to follow it along, you see. And we made the scene changes as rapid as possible. But audiences need time to absorb a moment. You see, when Shakespeare writes, he writes a very heavy scene, and right after it he has sometimes a comedy scene, or some kind of scene that gives you a lyrical sigh, release from that pressure. And that's always important in the theater. And I think White Hope maybe did not have enough moments of release from the punch, you know. To get punch, you have to have the, what do you call it? The release too. Wham, boom, wham. And with an audience, if it's always a constant assault, it puts the audience down, off, back, or something, you know. You have to give them a breathing spell. And I think scene changes, to some extent, do that.
Yes. Hold on a minute. We have a question in front, and you can go next.
The question is, would I like to do Macbeth or Hamlet? I would love to do especially Hamlet, because I think Hamlet is the most now play that Shakespeare ever wrote, the most modern play. Our character Iago is a modern character. He's a man with a modern dilemma, you know, a man who feels that the society has really shat upon him, and he's got to find any way possible to gain his identity back, gain his security, his position back, you know. Well, Hamlet is a good guy, Iago, but just as modern. I would love to do that. That was the first idea of my coming out here in the first place, but I got chicken. The director wanted to do Hamlet. I said, no, I better do something I've done before, you know. And that was my mistake, because I think I would have enjoyed, and I think you would have enjoyed seeing my concept of Hamlet. Macbeth, I've tried that before, it scares me. What I will say about both productions or any Shakespeare is I'd like to go somewhere quiet, a university or a quiet theater somewhere, and experiment with these plays and then do them on film. You know, that's my hope. I don't want to do any more commercial productions of Shakespeare. Yes.
Let's go over there.
Okay. What do you think the possibilities are of having more black female leading roles in film as well as stage productions?
Ladies like Gloria Foster and Cicely Tyson, ladies that I know, black ladies in the theater, have always said that their chances for getting good roles won't be realized until the black male role has been blazed thoroughly. In other words, until you get a great variety of black characters, black male characters, then you'll find their counterparts in the female characters growing, you see. I think that's somewhat true. The chances then depend a great deal on how you got a very fresh crop of young black actors out there now. Louis Gossett, Raymond St. Jacques, I could go on, George Stanford Brown, Larry Cook, who are going to blaze a lot of trails for the black experience, or in the black experience. And I think the female roles. Now I know this is going to be a very, it's going to sound like something, male chauvinist pig. But I really do believe that the female roles will develop according to how the male roles develop, and that has something to do with what? Male chauvinist pigism, right? Thank you.
What do you think of Jim Brown as an actor?
Oh, he's a fine actor. I think probably
you
a greater
skipped him.
football player. Like I'm a greater farmer. I'm really not, you see, I'm in a position now, I was just nominated for an Academy Award. I mean, if I go into a Primal experience, it'll be over that. I think it's as fantastic as it's supposed to be. Is probably the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced. It has both things running. It has a strange insanity running into it, and it has also a strange. I mean, I like receiving trophies, so I go for it. But at the same time, the whole thing is so crazy. Like George C. Scott says, how do you pick the best? You know, that's supposed to define me as a potentially great actor. Look, folks, I am not only not a great actor, I am not even an actor. I'm just a guy. And that's something I'm learning, you know, that you're an actor only when you're up there doing a particular job. And that job starts from ground zero every time you go on stage or every time you go in front of the camera. I'm more of a farmer than I am an actor. And many of you and the critics will agree. But that doesn't scare me anymore either. I'm no longer afraid of the critics, which is a groovy feeling. Yes?
Could you?
Well, yeah, the question was, it was a statement really that the critics found that I have done the play several times, and in this production it's like I really goofed. Well, no, but that's my reinterpretation. You said that the critics felt that I don't quite know where the character's at. Same thing, I goofed. Because I intended to show you all where he's at, you know. I come out here, and then it was like a setup. I mean, the critics haven't had such fun since, what, with the earthquake, I guess. James Earl Jones comes out here and is going to pretend to do his fifth Othello on us. They said, he's got to be kidding. We're going to get his ass good, you know. and they really had a field day. Time magazine, really, they were really trying to be nasty with me, you know, or on me. I mean, the word animal is not an accident, you see. They said Jones has conceived a wounded animal as Othello. Well, they're really saying, well, this what you call it, you see, all he can achieve is an animal. Well, I can get really paranoid out behind that. But what I'm aware of is that that's all you really are. If you're successful, you're only set up to be shot at, you know. And once you're aware of that, it doesn't hurt so much. I think when critics can inform you, that's one thing. But they rarely do inform me. I mean, I know where I'm bad and how I'm bad, and I've been living with myself for 40 years, and I think they have little, if nothing, to tell me. Did the production change? No. Oh yeah, oh sure. I was no longer interested in. The question was, did my interpretation change from the time I did it in New York and the time I did it here? And my answer is yes, it did change. The things I achieved in New York, I am no longer interested in. That's why I say that film is the only answer, because you can record it on film and you can achieve all the things in different layers. This production, I was interested in something quite different than the Noble Moor.
Yes.
If it's alive, it changes itself. If it's dead, it usually stays the same petrified thing. I am not happy at all with it, no. Because the main thing that I want to achieve as an actor is to communicate a character's dilemma through his feelings to an audience, and I think I rarely get that achieved here. And there are several reasons for that, some that the critics have pointed out, you know. But there are other reasons that have to do with the kind of people that come to the theater, you know. It has to do with my attitude about them. I really, when I look down and when I don't wear my glasses, I can't see very well, but when I see, frankly, when I see white-haired people in the audience, I get very uptight. I say, well, there's no chance. I cannot convey, especially if they're white-haired people. I cannot convey the agony of this black man to them, because they must have denied it all their lives. Their whole life is a conspiracy to deny that this black man could have feelings. So I really feel uptight about it. The most ideal audience I've ever played to has been on stage, has been to an audience of nuns. Because, first of all, they're women, and women are somehow, their feelings and their sense of feelings are more available to them. They haven't been quite as squashed as with young men. And the second is that they don't live the kind of life where their emotions are being splayed around all the time. They live a very confined life. So when you can nail them with an insight through a performance, it strikes a vein, and they often are, you know, they respond very deeply, I find. Some sort of an accident, I guess. The audiences? Oh, the question that, of all the Iagos I've played with, which one have I enjoyed the most? Well, in this production, I happen to have three. The Iago who I worked with in upstate New York in my second production of Othello is now playing, he's playing the Duke, and he's also playing Montano. A young man from New Mexico is playing Lodovico. He was an Iago. Tony Zerbe is actually playing Iago. I love working with Tony. I work with Mitch Ryan in New York. I love working with Mitch. Mitch and I were sort of physically built somewhat alike, so I dug that because there was no contest between a big guy and a little guy. It was somehow more evenly matched, you know.
In Los Angeles, when a lot of plays come here after running for 2 years beautifully on Broadway, they usually die here. It's not a great theater town. How do you find your audiences comparison between New York and Los Angeles?
Well, it's sort of unfortunate in both places because the people that come to the Mark Taper Forum Theater, and especially the Amazon, I'm sure, are the subscribers. There are people from a certain class, economic and social class, and they're the last people that you would make sure got the word if you had something important to say. You know. You see, I don't want to be chauvinistic about that either. But what the point I'm getting at, I mean, they come because they think they should have the message. But the people who really need the message are the radicals on either wing. You know, the people who would hate me or love me automatically are the ones that I want to communicate this play to. The extremists, you know. In New York, I think I think they're just a little bit more leftist than they are out here, but they're the same kind of people. They're the intellectuals, the ones who've had the message for years and it hasn't done them any good, you know. So, and I mean that. Sometimes all a person needs to be is to be told or shown or allowed to feel something, and it changes his life. Other people, man, you can tell them for production after production after production and it doesn't help. Well, then what's the point of them as an audience, you know?
Yes, let's take this. You, yeah. Could you speak up?
The question is, when you leave the stage or the set, how much of the character do you take with you, or do you have to try to drop? That's the whole problem of actor's identity and character's identity. There's no problem at all. An actor is to some extent a schizophrenic. While he's working, he's involved in a schizophrenia, which is quite real, especially if he is involved with his character. But once you leave the character's dialogue, you usually leave the character, you know. The only problem I've had like that has been with as an audience. I've walked into John Wayne movies and come out walking like John Wayne. It never happens to me as an actor, though. I can play John Wayne and leave the stage, you see, and be myself. Yeah.
Do you have to, well, like in The Great White Hope, for example, you were playing a powerful black man, and also, you know, let's see that famous smile, and then you'd come on, you know, just put on that smile, that little phony smile. In acting, when you, I think this is sort of like her question. Do you have to sort of put on a smile, like to get into a role, or can you just, can you walk on the stage and do it, or do you have to get into it? Like maybe come and sit on a stage for an hour before, or something, you know?
Most actors have some kind of preparation before they go on, and mine is simply to try to relax and try to drop as many of my own personal daily problems as I can, to relax my mind and my body, so that the character's experience can take over. This is probably the vaguest area in the art of acting, is how people prepare and how much they get identified. All the different schools of acting exist because people disagree as to how involved you have to get. It is both a psychological and an artistic problem, which I don't think has been resolved. I have not resolved it in my career. All of those of you who are actors or psychologists will find that it's a very rich field to explore. I find for that very reason, I think something does happen. I can't say that an actor does not get affected by the character he plays. Something does happen, and that's really why I have decided that I can't do a stage production for more than a month or two. I mean, I'm lucky with Othello that we have a 6-week run, and that's already too long, because something does begin to happen to you. If nothing more than you're suppressing your own private feelings for the sake of the character's feelings, you know. But something happens to you that is not necessarily healthy. I think film acting is, for that reason alone, is much healthier.
This may be an unfair question, but could you comment on the function of Emilia?
Can I comment on the function of Emilia? I'd be happy to, because it's one of my favorite characters in the play. Cassio is my favorite character in the play, and then Emilia is my next. Shakespeare has Emilia in that play to represent the person who is most subdued, most oppressed. I mean, she hasn't heard from women's lib, you know. I think Desdemona, by accident of her class, has much more sense of what a woman's freedom is about than Emilia. She takes every bit of shit that Iago hands her, swallows it, and is grateful. Now, in her hands is entrusted the job of exposing the real villain at the end of the play. And that's a great dramatic thing for Shakespeare to do, to take the least likely character to carry the truth and have her at the last minute forced to really tell it at the pain of her life, and she does, of course, die for it. Shakespeare, the whole play is a study of deception, truth, and falseness, you know. It's a whole study of deception. That Emilia is the cavalry at the end of the play, but the least likely person to have that job, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, if most actors take critics so lightly, then why does the public weigh them so heavily? And do the actors consider what they say worthwhile, or is it just a bunch of bullshit?
You mean, what is that? Is what critics have to say worthwhile?
Well, do actors consider critics worthwhile? Their comments on movies, plays, and the public looks at comments they make and goes to the show or doesn't go to the show.
Of course, the public needs a guideline. You can't go see everything, you know. They perform a function. I'm just saying that I don't think they perform it very well. You see, the art of criticism is an art, after all. It is not just your opinion, you see. So when a critic informs me, I'm very happy to read him. I mean about my own work. And I'm certainly happy to read him when he informs me about something I think I should see or want to see.
Okay, let's take 2 more questions. We'll take one at the mic and one here. Okay.
Yeah, when are we going to be able to see you in Nat Turner and/or Malcolm X?
Oh, brother, thank you. Soon, I hope. But the problem with those 2 pieces, that they're so hot. I mean, the film companies that bought them up, if I did not know them better, I would think they were just keeping a lid on them. Because it's like they cannot find a way to get those things done. They hire writer after writer, and they cannot achieve a concept that is worth filming in either case. Now, that is both because of stupidity and also because of great fear. But I'd rather for them to be delayed than to be done badly. Che Guevara was done badly. You know, I would hate to see Malcolm X or Nat Turner done badly. And I'm not saying that I'm the right person to do them, but I certainly want to have a crack at it.
Okay, last question.
Cassio is my favorite character in the play because he has very little to do. I mean, compared to Iago and Othello, he breezes through and he's very important, yet he, you know, a few nice things to say. I want to play little parts, guys that don't do much from now on.
Yes.
How much of The Great White Hope is fact? Very little of the film is fact. For instance, deal with the issue of Jack Johnson's relationship with women. The real Jack Johnson was married first to a black woman, then to 3 white women. He had a black mistress and I think about 2 white mistresses. So that's what, 7 women or so? Very heavily involved. In our concept, there are only 2. The black woman who used to be his woman, who he's now rejected, and the white woman who he takes for a while and then finally rejects. The author did that to simply unify. He didn't want to make it a story about all these different women, so he wanted to make it about Jack. So he selected a black and a white woman to represent all the others. There are other, I mean, he went to about twice as many different countries as our character did in the film and the play. 2 of the most spectacular countries he visited were Spain and Russia. He was a bullfighter in Spain, also involved with espionage in Spain during the First World War. He was kicked out of London several times for spouting pro-German sentiments. He was pro-Axis during the First World War. Nobody knew whether that was real or whether that was a cover, you know. He was in Russia at the time of Rasputin. He was kicked out of Russia with Rasputin. There, you know, you could have a TV series about that man's life if you wanted to tell all the truth. But we chose just to give you a smattering and give you as strong an impression of the character as we could, or the kind of a man he was as we could. 2 more questions.
Okay, let's take it here. Yes.
The movie was what? Back Way Out? Made by whom? Oh, The End of the Road. Well, the question was, why wasn't The End of the Road given more publicity? It was reviewed in New York, got very bad reviews. I think non-informing reviews, and it sort of died there. It got very little release out here. I think the film suffered from lack of clarity. It came along at a time when I think the avant-garde attitude in film had been played out quite a bit, and people wanted things to be not only fresh but also clear. For a while, it was okay to be, as long as you were fresh, you didn't have to be clear. They just wanted to see something new. But then, after that wore off, people wanted insight from what they saw, clear insight, you know. And I think the audience deserves that. We failed them to some extent in End of the Road. I think it was not clear what all that crazy house was about, you know. Or what that guy I was playing was about. That wasn't very clear. And I think the mistake I made was I tried to make it too direct. I tried to pretend that's all there was about him, when if I'd played him a bit more mysterious, your own imagination would have fed into it more. Yes. I'm not sure if I got all the questions, but I think it was, when I select a role, do I think how I what? How the black people, the black audience, you mean, how they will accept it? Well, you see, I have a problem. When I, as a black actor, select a role, I am indeed as concerned as any other black actor is as how the black audience will concerned. I'm also concerned about how the white audience will accept it. I'm concerned about how the Europeans and the Africans will accept it. But I have one problem. I think my job is, for the moment at least, because I am not a revolutionary, my job is to play as many characters that were real, that in real life, to select something I want to say about that character and try to say it. Now, that means I might end up playing Step and Fetch It someday. Now, if I'm going to worry about black image, I would avoid that. But if there's something I want to say about American society through playing Step and Fetch It, I will do it, you see. It's odd to find that a man who wants to play Step and Fetch It also wants to play Malcolm X, but I think that's the nature of the actor, especially what I call myself a mercenary actor, you know. And I don't say that as a philosophical negative. I just say that's a condition of how I place myself in this society. I'm a mercenary. I'm a black who's taken on the job of trying to portray characters and for my satisfaction with meaning. So, but I feel that I have a right and maybe the obligation to play characters that black people would dislike as well as the characters that they would like, you see.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.